Today's guest is Eddie Stern. Eddie has spent decades immersed in traditional yoga practice, teaching, and study, and has become one of the most thoughtful voices in contemporary yoga. His work has spanned Ashtanga yoga, Sanskrit chanting, neuroscience, and philosophy. More recently, he has developed Yoga Sangraha, an approach that integrates traditional principles with broader and more adaptive framework for modern practitioners. Today, we're going to explore what that evolution means and, more importantly, why it matters. Welcome, Eddie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for that very kind introduction.
You're welcome. Okay, let's begin really simply. What is Yoga Sangraha?
Well, Sangraha is a Sanskrit word that means collection or compendium, and it's a word that you find in different types of Sanskrit texts where they've collected a bunch of different material together that all fit under one topic. So you might have a mantra sangraha or a puja sangraha, which is collection of different types of pujas. Or you might have texts on philosophical systems that are called sangrahas, where a variety of different viewpoints on one topic are all collected together. And so what I have done with the Yoga Sangraha is I've taken different types of practices from different areas of India that I like and that seem to work really well on particular aspects of either the body or nervous system or other physiological systems, and put them together in such a way that they kind of make sense. So the reason that I called it Yoga Sangraha is because basically it's a collection of practices from different parts of India that I've put together in a unique kind of a way.
So, how did you decide on which practices and from where? I mean, I know you've got decades of study and travel, but it is a wealth of material for you to work with. How do you even begin to pick and choose what's going to be included?
Well, you try a lot of different things, and the things that seem to work well are the things that you stick with. And there are certain things that I, and all of it is based on my own particular experience of these practices and what they're doing to me. What are the things that I'm trying to navigate? What are the outcomes that I'm looking for? So there were a couple things. One, I felt that I had lost touch with the inner meaning of yoga because I had become so physically oriented with asanas for such a long time. And the 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 part of me that was a curious seeker, how I started off, kind of got lost a little bit in the idea of becoming good at something, like
Hmm.
becoming good at asanas or, learning different sequences or getting through different series or accomplishment or stuff like that. And I needed to get all of that out of my system. I needed to get all striving within asanas and the idea of stretching and going further and being able to do an asana well or any of those things. I needed all of that out from me, so that I could reconnect to why I was doing these things in the first place, which is to know myself and, to be happy and to be a good person the best I can and to regulate my nervous system and all those types of things. So what I really decided to focus on was nervous system regulation. And I felt that by keeping your nervous system in a very calm state or learning how to bring it into calm and regulated states, that you could easily enter into meditative states. And that was what I wanted the yoga practices to do for me, that I would do these things. And when I was done, automatically I could be meditative and move in, because that's what yoga is for, basically. It's
Hmm.
for concentration and for the different meditative states. So I started choosing practices that I thought were going to bring me in that direction, and that after testing them were things that did bring me in that direction. And based on some knowledge I have of the nervous system and how stimulation on different parts of your spine is going to affect the way that your nervous system is signaling, I grouped postures together in such a way that I knew that it was going to have a balanced outcome. So, for example, forward bending postures are going to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system, and back extensions are going to stimulate your sympathetic nervous system, and twisting is going to be grounding for the nervous system and information flow between the right and left hemisphere and left and right hemisphere of the brain. And so on and so forth. So I looked at these basic postures and the effect that they have on the signaling of your nervous system and started combining them in particular ways where I knew that that signaling would become like a language, so that when you got to the end of a sequence of postures, it would bring you to the point where I wanted to be, which was in a meditative state or a very calm state. And so that's basically what it is.
So it sounds like you almost had a lab that you were working with to kind of experiment. But was this, are these universal outcomes, or is this something that you were testing on yourself and other people? How did you decide through, what you were learning and what you were adapting to create this new system, whether it was going to work for everybody and not just you?
Exactly. Great question. So first I tested it on myself for a long time. I developed these things over like a period of about 10 years. And then I started testing them out in the yoga school here. And then I did that for a bunch of time. And then I started teaching these things in larger workshops. And that's where I really started getting more feedback on whether these things worked or not, or how accessible they were. And over the past couple of years, this is all I've been teaching. I stopped teaching Ashtanga yoga a little over 2 years ago. I stopped practicing it about 5 years ago. And over the past 2 years, I've sort of taught or tested these sequences to about probably 12,000 people in live settings, like, across the world in 12,000 unique individuals, not just like repetitive types of things. And so I've gotten so that's like a lot of data points, as they would say.
Sure.
And that's a lot of feedback from people. And so you can see if you're teaching a class of 1,000 or 1,500 people, and the things that you're teaching these folks, pretty much basically everyone can do. And that at the end, when people are lying down and resting or meditating, you can feel the state that has been created among the people. Is it calm? Is it agitated? Is it, are people leaping up, after 30 seconds from Shavasana, or are they staying there because they're calm? So you get visual feedback and you get verbal feedback from these types of things. So I was the first lab, and then the people in the yoga school here in New York were the second people to try all these things. And then afterwards, I just started taking it out on the road with me, and I've had, the opportunity and privilege to teach it to a lot of people. And I still continue to refine things and change the way I articulate these types of things. And it's definitely a work in progress. And I have a feeling that it's always going to be an evolving work in progress. I think that these things need to be allowed to change and adapt, and not have the idea that here's one fixed system that always has to be the same and it's going to work for everybody. And so I believe that fixed systems can be good, but usually for limited amounts of time, because people are not fixed systems. People change. People have to change. This is what living is. It's change. And so to try to fit yourself into a fixed system and expect that that's going to work for the entirety of your life is completely delusional. So I think that we have to let there be room for adaptability, room for change, room for some things to basically stay the same, but to change or be adjusted as needed. So I have a basic format, and the format is physiological. It's based on nervous system signaling, but within that, there's a lot of room for adaptability.
It almost sounds, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that this is kind of a reaction against Ashtanga yoga. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, do you think that a lot of Ashtangis out there became too addicted to, this feeling of like incredibly dynamic practices, whether it's Ashtanga or something else? Is that a danger of dynamic practices, that we have become addicted to feeling everything?
Okay, so two things. One, this is definitely not a reaction against anything. Everything I've developed, and I've said this like a bunch of times before, that sometimes people tend to think, oh, I developed this as a reaction against other practices that I used to do. But I didn't. I developed it for something. I didn't develop it against anything. If I developed it against something, that would not have been terribly yogic. It wouldn't have been in the spirit of creativity and of development and growth. It would have been in the spirit of reactivity, which is not what we're looking for. So all the purposes of everything I'm doing now is for the goodness of those things and for the enjoyment and curiosity of all that India has to offer in regards to the yogic experience, which is like a lot of amazing things. Mm-hmm. So and also, of course, my love for science. So that's where this has come from. It's come from my love from India and for the wider yoga tradition of India, and my love for science and all that science can be useful for in thinking about these practices. In regards to very dynamic practices and the idea of deep postures and big postures and all that, yeah, this actually is problematic because people become so used to chasing after sensation, they lose touch with subtlety. So, for example, I've had many instances, and I've spoken about this in the past too, where you have people lying on the floor and you just have them stretch their arms over their head and lie there and breathe. And they say, well, I don't feel anything. And you're like, well, do you not feel the floor below you? Do you not feel your breath? Do you not feel that you're alive? Do you not feel the sensation of air on your skin? Of course you feel something, but what you don't feel is a huge stretch. And so if you always need to be chasing after big sensations all the time, this is also going to become problematic in your regular life too, where you're always going to be chasing after something that gives you a lot of feeling, and then you aren't able to just be present with whatever is happening right there in that moment. So this is a general observation. It's not specific towards one type of yoga or one type of anything. It's just the nature of the world that we've been living in, that we're used to things coming very quickly, and we're used to really a lot of sensation and a lot of impact, and then we start to lose touch with subtlety. And when it comes to quieting your mind and moving into meditative states, it's all about subtlety. It's not about opening your chakras and kundalini and flashes of enlightenment and all these types of things that you might read in the books. Maybe that'll come. Maybe big sensations that are emotional outpourings will come. Fine. But when it comes to quieting the mind and looking into the teachings of something like, say, Yoga Sutra, it's all about subtlety and calming down all of the winds of change of the mind and thinning out the samskaras, or the subtle impressions of memory and of desire and all these things. Because it's only when everything becomes very, very, very subtle and very, very quiet that your inner nature begins to reflect forward in the field of chitta, or in the field of buddhi, the field of the intellect. It doesn't happen when there's a lot of stuff happening. It happens when things get very quiet. So asanas should move us towards being quiet. And we don't need to do intense things to move into states of quiet. You can do quiet things to move into states of quiet too. Sometimes you need to do a little bit of dynamic stuff, and that can help you move into quiet. But if the dynamic things go on for too long and they're too intense over a long period of time, it's just going to keep stimulating the branch of your nervous system, which is always seeking a lot of activity. And so it's just how it goes.
So then and
it's physiological, and that's so rather than thinking about it in terms of making a value judgment about an approach to a practice, or a value judgment about how something is being done, just look at the physiology of something, and it'll tell you whether or not it's going to help move you into a quiet, balanced, calm, receptive, open, happy state.
So then in a typical workshop or class, you will start with some physical practices to deliver you into that state. So is that what we're saying? The state comes toward the end of class? That's what you're getting prepared for on a physiological level, to settle everything so that the nervous system can completely balance. Is that the goal and the means as well.
Yes, you could look at it like a recipe. You're pulling together all these different ingredients and you mix together and cook them up, and then you're ready to eat the bread that you made, or the pie, or the cake, or the bowl of rice and vegetables, or whatever it is. And so, in all of the different postures that we're doing, you put yourself in a particular position and you breathe. And then the posture, the way that you've placed your body, is going to affect the signaling of your nervous system. That's going to send messages to your brain saying something, saying you're calm, or you're energized, or you're grounded, whatever it is. You don't have to say that to yourself. The position of your body and the impact on your spine is going to do that, because that's how the nervous system picks up messages. So we do a variety of different things without even trying to stretch. You will feel a stretch, in these postures, but the idea isn't to think about stretching, but to hold yourself steady in these intentional positions so that it has a particular signaling effect on the nervous system and on the brain, in the way that hormones are being released in your bloodstream and all that kind of stuff.
And what about the breathing practices? Are there any particular pranayamas that are traditional that you employ? How does one breathe in a Yoga Sangraha class?
You breathe slow, even breaths, and you allow your belly to move in and out as you breathe. There's no particular sound of the breath or ujjayi or anything like that. It's just natural breathing, but slower than normal, but natural. And there are pranayama practices that we do at the beginning of the class, sometimes at the end. And also, when I come to mission, I'll also be doing separate pranayama classes that are particular sequences of breathing practices with the same intention of signaling in the nervous system. For example, you find in Yoga Sutra this idea of a spontaneous seizing of your breath. Rather than doing a breath hold, that there's a spontaneous seizing of the breath from pranayama or from some other types of meditative practices. So there are ways of doing very, very simple pranayama practices where you can find that naturally your breath just automatically stops for a little while when you're done with them. And so when I teach these things, and when my colleagues who I form yoga education college with teach these things, we'll find that 80 to 90% of the people in a class, even if it's a large class, will find that their breath naturally stops for a little while, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, or maybe sometimes 2 minutes after doing these simple practices, simply because you have lowered the metabolic needs of your body to a point where oxygen isn't necessary in that moment. And so your body doesn't need to breathe. So if you figure out ways to adjust the metabolic needs of the body, it's not about long breath holds. It's not about super deep breathing. It's not about hyperventilation techniques or anything like that. It's just, how do I adjust these metabolic needs and lower them so much that for a little while my body doesn't need to breathe? And then you can experience it like really simply, just a breathless state for a little while. And then when it's time to breathe, you start breathing. So these are the types of things. They're really simple and they're very effective.
Are you chronicling all this? Because it sounds like you're learning quite a bit about what this system, the impacts that it's having. And I think, for the broader yoga community, even beyond yoga community, I think this is some really interesting finds that you have. And I'm wondering, what are you doing with this information? And what is your goal for Yoga Sangraha going forward?
What am I doing with this information? Well, I'm not really chronicling things. I'm terrible with that. And I wish I had a record of all the different things that I've thought about or taught or created, or, I have notebooks that I keep every once in a while of stuff that I'm doing. And then, I lag behind. And so I'm not really chronicling anything, but I'm teaching a lot, and I'm teaching people how to teach these things. And they're also having pretty good feedback from their students, especially in regards to simplicity and accessibility. Um, and what are my goals with it? I've been teaching yoga since 1989, and my goal with teaching yoga has always been the same, except for a couple of decades doing Ashtanga yoga where the goal changed a bit. But for the most part, the goal always was to teach people things that was going to make their lives happier and healthier. but mainly happier, and more easeful. That's why I started doing yoga in the beginning so I could know who I was and understand what consciousness was. But I understood that by knowing myself on deeper levels, that would automatically translate into ease with who I was.
Mm.
That would then kind of present itself as happiness. So happiness wasn't the goal. Like knowing who you are and then being able to be who you were was the goal. And then happiness was kind of like an outcome of that, an added benefit, you could say. So I have those same goals now as I did 30 some odd years ago, which is to teach useful, beneficial things that are going to help people become more settled in themselves as human beings. And and that's all really. And you know, I don't have this big goal like, oh, Yoga Sangraha is going to become like a thing, and it'll be like a yoga on the world stage, like all the other named yogas that they have out there. Um, I mean, whatever, if that happens, fine. But again, that's not a goal. The goal is to make sure that I stay connected to the spiritual essence of yoga within me, and that what I'm teaching is a reflection of that. Because that's what I chose to do with my life. And so that's what I want to make sure I continue to do. And so that requires a lot of self reflection, a lot of checking myself, and a lot of getting feedback from people and all that stuff.
Speaking of getting feedback from people, you wrote a newsletter, I think it was a few weeks ago, where you were talking about how the evolution in your teaching has brought new students into your work, while others have moved on. And I thought that was very interesting because I mean, there's a lot of teachers here in London who, are your age and starting to adapt what they're doing. And sometimes they'll lose students and sometimes they'll gain new ones. So I guess what I'm asking you is what has that experience been for you?
Well, when I stopped teaching Ashtanga yoga, especially when I stopped even having an Ashtanga yoga program in the temple, um, pretty much everybody left who had been here before. And then a bunch of new people have come, and the what was it like having all of these people who I gave a lot of my life to just kind of up and leave?
Yeah.
It was disappointing, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I understand if people want to continue what they're doing. Like everyone should do the practices that make them happy and stuff like that. And but I honestly was a little bit disappointed that more people weren't open to giving this a go and to seeing what it would do for them. But that's their choice, and I made my choices, and I'm really, really happy with my choices. I was not happy for decades in the Ashtanga yoga world for a lot of different reasons. Um, and I'm very happy that I left it. And I'm very happy that I'm doing what I do now. And for those who still are happy doing Ashtanga yoga, great. I hope they continue to be happy. And that's all. So, I'm only 2 years into now doing a new thing. Um, and and it takes time for things to grow and evolve and
Hmm.
to see if they pick up or whatever. When I started teaching Ashtanga yoga in New York, there was no other Ashtanga yoga in New York. There hadn't been since the 1980s when Norman Allen was here.
Hmm.
And so I had just a couple people in my classes for like a long time. And then it wasn't until you know, later in the 1990s that things really started to
Yeah.
pick up for me. So it was a slow growth back then, and then it just like mushroomed, and then it became huge here. So
Maybe history is repeating
um,
itself.
maybe it'll be a new history or a different history. So I'm happy to take things slowly, but I'm more happy to do things that I really believe in.
Yeah.
And I was doing something for a long time that I didn't believe in, um, and so now I'm happy to be back in to be back in that.
When you look at the arc of your teaching, has anything remained constant underneath all the changes?
Um, well, yeah, the quest to be engaged in yoga has remained the same, and that's that's remained a constant. Um, as I said, like I lost the thread of my spirituality for a little while, um, because of the nature of the Ashtanga yoga world.
Mm.
And and this was my experience and not everybody's experience. And it was my experience because, um, you know, number one, when I started off with it, the community was a little bit smaller. And there was, we had more proximity to like Pattabhi Jois and to all that. And as you started getting quote unquote good at Ashtanga yoga and we're progressing through the series, like there was a little bit of this sense of a hierarchy that
Mm.
was built into the community, and it wasn't super healthy. And I had a place in that hierarchy.
You did.
And like a lot of the people I saw around me, you know, we got attached to sort of our place and our role, in being like, oh, there are only 10 people in the world who are certified, as with an advanced level certificate or whatever. And so there was like an arrogance that got built into that. And there was an attachment to position, which got built into that. And then, worst of all, in like the attachment to position and to the hierarchy, there was the willful ignoring or denial that Pattabhi Jois was sexually abusing women in his classes. And so I put myself in a position where for a long time I was in total like denial about a lot of really, really bad things that were going on. And there were things that I had seen, like I saw Pattabhi Jois touching women's breasts in class or putting his hands on their vagina. And I didn't, and I didn't do anything and I didn't say anything.
Mm.
And so I I compromised myself on such a deep like moral and ethical level in order to be a part of something because it made me feel like I had a role or a place or was important. And it is, and then it all just got to be too much. It was too bad, and it was um, too wrong to continue not acknowledging those things and teaching his practices and everything. So the first thing that happened was I had to be strong enough within myself to start um, acknowledging publicly what I saw and what he had done. And and then after I did that, then I couldn't do his yoga anymore.
Mm.
And so I had to stop doing Ashtanga yoga. And that
Mm.
occurred in 2020. And then I was still teaching his practices because it was my livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, what will I do if I don't do
Mm-hmm.
this?
Mm-hmm.
But as early as like 2012, I'd started playing around with these things that have developed into what I call Yoga Sangraha now. So I had all this stuff inside of me that I was working on, but I wasn't brave enough to just switch over and start teaching
It's
it.
hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to move away from what defined you.
yeah. But this is also like part of yoga, giving up your identities one by one and then maybe taking on new ones. So, this was like it wasn't a dark night of a soul. It was the it was a compromise to my morals and to my ethics and to the things that brought me into yoga in the first place. And I compromised those things so deeply, for a name and for position and for livelihood. Like, to be brutally honest, like that's what I did. And I had to get over all of that and escape from all of that. Um, and that was really hard to do. But when I finally did it, I was so happy I did it. I
Mm.
felt so much better about myself as a human being that that I thought to myself, how could this have taken me so long? How did I shield like these people from all this, stuff that I was hiding, meaning the Joyce family? Like, how did I give my whole life to people who were behaving so badly? Um, and so that was, I still don't know how I could have done that for so long. So, when you ask the
You sound
question,
regretful, though. I mean, are you now in a place where, because, to live in the past, it's not healthy for you,
yeah,
right? So
oh,
do you find, you were able to, I don't want to say, well, maybe I do want to say forgive yourself for not coming out sooner, but, where you are now, is
mhm.
this, seems like it's a much better place for you as a teacher and as a practitioner. Have you been able to let the past go? Should you let the past go? I guess is the other question.
Um, so the first question is, do I regret anything? Yeah, 100% I do. I definitely regret, um, giving 2 decades of my life to a person in a system who didn't deserve it. And I definitely regret not having the strength to have spoken up and left a lot earlier than I did. And I do I do I forgive myself? Um, I'm okay with myself. I understand why it was so hard for me to do that, and I and I don't think I'm living in the past with it really, because I'm so much enjoying what I'm doing now. But in these types of conversations where there's questions that come up about it, I like to be very honest with people about what happened with me and why I'm doing what I do. And I understand this isn't everyone's experience, um, but it's part of mine, and it's part of what led me to be uh, brave enough within myself to kind of jump off a cliff and say, this is all I'm going to teach and all I'm going to do now. And also to try to create a different type of community around me and that I'm involved in, where people have a lot more autonomy and where their voices can be heard and where input is accepted and stuff like that. So that's not what I experienced for a very long time. So the thing which is why I went off on that tangent was this was where I compromised myself with my yoga journey. When I started doing yoga in the 1980s, it was all about consciousness. It was all about enlightenment. It was all about bringing goodness into yourself and goodness into the world. And I lost that for a while. And now I've recaptured it again. And I've recaptured that same excitement that I had when I was, 18, 19, 20, getting started. And I feel like that's how old I am again, too, with all of these types of things. So things happen and you don't have a choice, especially when they're done. They had to happen that way. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it had to unfold for me because I wasn't ready, obviously, for whatever was going to come next. So there's a story I do like to share, and I'll share it here with you, which was when I was about 18 years old, and I had long hair, and I used to have a mohawk and all these things, um, and I had dyed my hair black. And my girlfriend at the time, and it looked horrible, by the way, and my girlfriend at the time was like, what did you do to your hair? Like, why are you doing this? When you're 50 years old, there's no way you're going to be dressing like you are and, doing this stuff to your hair. And I said to her, and I felt it very deeply inside myself at that moment. I said, whoever I am when I'm 50, I might dress different and I might have a different haircut, but I'm going to be the same me as I am right in this moment. And I'm going to be the me that is aware that I am a person. I'm aware that I have consciousness within me. I'm aware that I'm observing. I said, that's never going to change, even if my outer form changes. And it was my first real deep insight to like observer consciousness. And I felt it so strongly. And that's like really powered me through my entire life because I remember that moment so clearly and I still feel it really clearly. And so she was right about my hair because I don't have any anymore. But I I still
Fabulous.
I still primarily, that's why it's so kind. I still primarily, I dress almost the same. I wear all black most of the time. And so that hasn't changed. But so this is the thing which has remained a constant. And it's the thing that really I feel is the essence of being alive, you know, knowing that you are so and observing it.
Well, we're looking forward to welcoming you to Mission. You're coming April 10, 11, and 12. So
Hmm.
people can sign up for the full weekend of workshops. They can also sign up for individual ones. This is being run in collaboration with our friends at Down to Earth, which is a North London yoga studio that I believe you went to last year.
Yep.
So we're working with Vanda and the team there to bring you to Mission, and I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to be coming along. I really am interested in what you're creating and the science of it. I think for me, it is all about the science and what can we prove, and I'm fully behind you on that in your research. So thank you very much, Eddie. We'll see you
Thank you.
soon.
Cool. And if I could just say one parting word,
Sure.
you know, and then whenever people ask me about my Ashtanga yoga past and things like that, I like to make it clear to people that I don't think it's a bad system. I think there's some really beneficial things about it, and that the experiences that I had with Pattabhi Jois and with Sharat and with other members of the family are the experiences that I had. And so it shaped and colored a lot of my whole perception of everything. But there are a lot of people around the world who can do these practices and feel super great and happy, and they're done with it and they're not involved with anything else. I saw other things, and I saw other things that I couldn't turn away from. But I don't have a judgment of people for practicing these things. I want people to be able to do the things that make them happy. Um, and but also for people to know that there is a little bit of dogma around the practice saying you have to do it 6 days a week, or
Mhm.
you have to do this, that, or the other, or this is, there's only one way of doing the sequences. And those things can be okay for creating discipline in your life, but they're not always good long term. So when people feel that they need to start changing something or they're getting a lot of pain, this is an indication that something isn't working and that it's okay to change it. So do what you do. But if you start to get a signal that something needs to change, it probably does. I ignored those signals for a long time, and a lot of people ignore those signals. But we have red flags for a reason, and they're usually true. So listen to any red flags or yellow flags that you happen to get. Adjust the things, and then it's like, no problem. But if you feel that you can't change anything, then you're getting locked into something which is not going to be mentally or physically healthy for you long term. So, so I don't have anything against Ashtanga yoga, and what I created is not against it. It's not an answer against it. As I said, it's good in and of itself, and I love it for what it is. And and I don't want any people in the Ashtanga yoga world to think that I have any sort of negativity towards them or towards a generalized form of doing asanas based on my own personal experience. Those two things are separate, they're distinct. I understand that they are. And I also understand the limitations of things that are formatted, the limitations of things that are too formulaic. Of course, everything has a limitation, otherwise, it wouldn't exist. But we have to acknowledge limitations and allow things to change when they need to. And then long term, you'll be healthier and happier. That's all.
Thank you, Eddie.